There's an app on the World Wide Web that allows us to listen to some amazing talks, the TED Talks, if you're familiar with them. And in one very poignant talk, John Sutherland, an officer in London's police department, explains a principle in forensic science called Locard's exchange principle. It was developed by Dr. Edmond Locard. He was known as the Sherlock Holmes of France. This principle has a simple premise, and the premise is this: every contact leaves a trace. In other words, every criminal leaves a trace behind him. One forensic expert put it this way: wherever he steps, whatever he touches, whatever he leaves, even unconsciously, will serve as a silent witness against him. Not only his fingerprints or his footprints, but his hair, the fibers from his clothes, the glass he breaks, the paint he scratches, the blood he deposits or collects. This is evidence that does not forget. Sutherland took this principle and applied it not just to forensic science, but to all human relationships. Every time two people come into contact with one another, an exchange takes place, whether between lifelong friends or passing strangers. When we encourage, we ignore, or hold out a hand, or withdraw it, we walk towards or we walk away, we bless or we curse, every single contact leaves a trace. The way that we treat and regard one another matters. It really matters. As I welcome all of you back to this magnificently restored cathedral, this weekend I congratulate this small cathedral community for the trace that you have left the worshipers who come after all of us. Your continued support, not just financially, but spiritually and morally, has made this restoration a reality that will impact our diocese, our community, our parish for many, many years to come. What you see around you this evening is evidence that will not forget. But be very careful. Be very careful not to think that what we have just accomplished is only to restore and beautify a magnificent structure, because we have done so much more than that. Robert Barron is the auxiliary bishop of Los Angeles, and he writes that art works as a sort of alchemy of the soul, which can awaken in people a desire to participate. Hans Balthasar, one of the great advocates of the aesthetic approach to religion, said that the beautiful claims the viewer, changes the viewer, and then sends the viewer on a mission. Richard Vasco is a consultant for church art. He states, art serves the same purpose as a good homily. It serves to remind worshipers of their roots, their tradition as a religious people, and their mission in the world. Thus, what has been accomplished in this structure by your patient generosity is so much more than simply beautifying an old building. This sacred space, which is set aside for worship, is an expression and an extension of God's overarching creative process, providing beauty, security, and purpose. We just had that beautiful psalm sung. My soul is thirsting for you, O Lord my God. The psalmist expresses the deepest yearnings that we have as humans. We hunger and thirst for an experience of the God who created us in a universe where at times we feel very much like Jeremiah in that first reading, who screams out to the Lord, "You duped me, O Lord, and I let myself be duped." We hunger and thirst for an experience of the God who created us as we struggle not to conform to this age, but to search for God's will in our lives. We hunger and thirst for an experience of the God who created us when we try to respond to the call of Jesus in that gospel to take up our cross, to deny ourselves, and follow him so as not to gain the whole world and then forfeit our lives. Hopefully, the beauty, the magnificence of this sacred space will implant in each one of us the wonder and the awe that we strive for, so as to have an experience of this elusive God, and we can relish the peace that comes from this experience. Vasco continues to share with us that the experience of these magnificent houses of prayer also call each one of us to act with justice and humility in the public square. The Eucharistic celebrations that will happen and do happen around that altar as we enter into this restored cathedral, these Eucharistic celebrations send us out to share what this sacrament stands for outside of this magnificent structure. And what does the sacrament stand for? What's the meaning of it all? What are we called to do? We're called to feed the hungry. We're called to clothe the naked. We're called to house the homeless. So the works of art that we see around us summon us to respond to our Christian vocation. They summon us to be ambassadors of peace and justice in our community and in our whole world. Art summons us to tend to the needs of those people living on the fringes of society, all of the abused and the oppressed, and especially these last few days as we've seen the devastation that has taken place because of the hurricane in Texas. The people of our diocese, the parishioners here at Cathedral, you have left evidence that does not forget. So let the art of this magnificent cathedral transform us, challenge us, and take us into new directions.